Your rent just went up again, but you keep hearing that home prices are falling. So you're thinking, if home prices are dropping, shouldn't my rent go down too? But here's what nobody's telling you. Rent and home prices don't move together. In fact, they often move in opposite directions. In this video, I'm breaking down why your rent will keep going up even as home prices fall. What's driving this disconnect, and most importantly, when it makes sense to stop renting and lock in your housing costs by buying. I own 14 rental properties. I've closed 50 million plus in real estate transactions, and I've studied this exact pattern and saw how it played out in 2008, 2011, and right now. Let's break it down. Okay, so first, let's talk about what's actually happening right now. I get messages from renters all the time saying, Tanner, I keep hearing the housing market is crashing. Why did my landlord just raise my rent $200 a month? Because rent and home prices are driven by different forces. Home prices are driven by buyer demand, interest rates, mortgage availability, investor sentiment. Rents are driven by rental demand, rental supply, landlord costs, local job market. Let me show you why rents don't fall as easily as home prices. Here's the key concept. Rents are sticky. They don't fall easily even when home prices drop. And as a landlord, I can tell you exactly why. My buddy owns a rental property in Florida. His insurance went from $1,800 a year to $3,200 a year in just 2 years. That's an extra $1,400 per year he has to cover. Where do you think that cost goes? It gets passed on to the tenant. If home prices fall, many landlords are underwater or close to it. They can't sell without taking a loss. So what do? They hold the property and keep renting it out. They're not adding supply to the sales market, and they're not removing supply from the rental market. And here's the counterintuitive part. Higher rates, buyers can't afford to buy. They keep renting, rental demand stays high, and rents stay high or they rise. So falling home prices actually increase rental demand. It's the opposite of what you'd expect. And there's one more factor that's making this worse right now. And here's what's happening. We had a wave of new apartments delivered in 2023, 2024. The reason being is because these builders bought so much land in 2021, 2020, and that created some relief when all this inventory came. But that pipeline is drying up. Less supply plus steady demand equals rents keep rising. And this isn't just theory. We've seen this exact pattern before. Let's look at what happened during the last housing crash. Home prices from 2008 to 2011, they were down 33% nationally, down 50 to 60% in the hardest hit markets, and they were foreclosures everywhere. Now, rents from 2008 to 2011, they were up 5 to 10% in most markets. They were flat in some markets, and they were down only in the most distressed markets. Now, why did this happen? Foreclosures forced homeowners to become renters. Tight credit meant people couldn't buy, and rental demand surged. Landlords held properties. They didn't sell at a loss, and new construction also stopped. And here's the kicker. Renters during this period got crushed. They couldn't buy because their credit was tight, and their rent kept going up because demand was high. The people who bought homes in 2009 to 2011, at the bottom, they locked in low prices and low rates. They're sitting very pretty now. The people who waited and kept renting, they paid more in rent every single year and missed the bottom. So what's happening in different markets right now? Let's break down what's happening in different markets. In Austin, Texas, it's down 8% year over year. Phoenix, Arizona, down 5%. Boise, Idaho, down 6%. Nashville, Tennessee, down 4%. Why aren't rents falling here? Well, massive apartment construction in 2022 to 2023, oversupply of luxury apartments, the population growth is slowing, and landlords competing for tenants. But here's the thing. In Austin, luxury one-bedroom apartments are down 8%, but affordable one-bedrooms still up 3%. Markets where rents are rising. New York, up 12%. Miami, Florida, up 10%. Los Angeles, California, up 8%. Boston, Massachusetts, up 9%. So why are rents rising here? Limited new construction, strong job markets, high cost of home ownership keeps people renting, and landlord costs rising, insurance, taxes, etc. Here's the metric that will help you decide whether to keep renting or buying. This tells you how expensive it is to rent versus buy in your market. Example number 1, Austin, Texas. Average home price, $500,000. Monthly rent, $2,500. The annual rent, $30,000, which brings our ratio to 6%. Example number 2, San Francisco, California. Home price, $1.2 million, monthly rent $3,500, annual rent $42,000, which brings our ratio to 3.5%. So if it's above 5%, renting might make more sense. Homes are expensive relative to rent. If it's below 5%, buying might make more sense. Homes are cheap relative to rent. And if it's below 4%, buying is a no-brainer if you can afford it. So in Austin, Texas, 6%, renting might still make sense short term. In San Francisco at 3.5%. If you can afford to buy, you definitely should, because rent is expensive relative to home prices. But there's one more calculation you need to do. Here's how to figure out if you should buy or keep renting. Step 1, calculate your monthly rent trajectory. Your current rent, $2,500 a month, annual increase of 5%. Year 1, $2,500. Year 2, $2,625. Year 3, $2,756. Year 4, $2,894. Year 5, $3,039. The total rent paid over 5 years, $163,140. Step 2, calculate your mortgage payment, home price being $500,000, your down payment, let's call it $50,000, your loan amount, $450,000. So let's call your interest rate 7%. We'll be conservative here, maybe credit's not the best. Now your monthly payment, your P&I, is $2,994. Let's say your property tax is $520 a month, your insurance is $200 a month, your maintenance is $417 a month, your total monthly costs $4,131. So owning costs $1,631 more per month. Why would you buy? Well, here's why. Because your rent goes up 5% every year, your mortgage payment stays the same or gets better typically when you refinance, you're building equity, and also you're locking in your housing costs. But equity built from principal is $37,200. Equity from appreciation, we'll call it 2%, $52,000. Your total equity, $89,200. So if you're planning to stay 5+ years, buying wins every time. If you're only staying 2 to 3 years, renting might win. So what should you actually do? Here's my framework. Buy now if you're planning to stay 5+ years, you can afford 10 to 20% down, your rent is rising fast. You can afford 10 to 20% down, your rent is rising fast, 5% plus per year. Your rent to price ratio is below 5%. You want stability and control. Keep renting if you might move in 2 to 3 years. You don't have 10% down saved, your market is clearly overheated, and your rent to price ratio is above 6%. Also, if you value flexibility. For most people in most markets, if you're planning to stay long term, buying makes sense, even at a 7% rate if you have bad credit. Because here's the truth, your rent will go up every year for the rest of your life. Your mortgage payment, it's fixed, and it can usually get better with the refinance. So here's an example. I've been buying properties for a long time, almost 8 years now. And I have moved my equity around, so my example is not the best, but I'm going to give you an example of my buddy who also bought when I did in 2019, and his mortgage payment right now is $2,100, and his neighbor who rents a similar unit, he's paying $3,400 a month. That's $1,300 a month difference. And here's the craziest part. The average American renter pays $1.4 million in rent over their lifetime, and at the end, they own absolutely nothing. Homeowners, they pay off their mortgage and own an asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if they don't pay off their mortgage, they usually have a big chunk of equity that they can play with. That's why locking in your housing costs matters. Don't wait for the perfect time. If you're planning to stay long-term and you can afford it, buying locks in your housing costs and protects you from the endless rent pit. If you want to learn how to analyze deals and find cash flowing properties, check out my 2026 real estate strategy video in the description below. And if you're serious about building wealth through real estate, I post videos once a week, posting about real numbers, real deals, no BS. Make sure you hit that subscribe.